I'm Walter Block.
I'm Jody Emery.
This is Adam Kokesh.
I'm Jeffrey Tucker.
I'm Ben Swan.
I'm Tom Woods.
I'm Peter Schiff.
I'm Eric Voorhees.
And you're listening to...
And you're listening...
And you're listening...
You're listening...
You're listening to...
Ed and Ethan soak up the awesomeness.
You are listening to Ed and Ethan, the voice of liberty in Canada, coming to you from Saskatoon in the province of Saskatchewan. My intrepid, amazing, talented, and beyond reproach, I guess, Ed, the talented co-host that you are.
It's Ed. Thank you, everybody.
So spunky. My gosh. Wow. The energy that flows from you. I expect better. I think I'm going to have to garnish your wages. How much do you take from zero?
Exactly.
I am, of course, your humble host, very humble, Ethan. You're listening to us on Liberty Express Radio, libertyexpressradio.com, LRN, LMR, Daily Paul, Freedom Phalanx, Voluntary Virtues. We're at all those locations and more. You can check out edandethan.com to subscribe to our RSS feed. Listen to us directly. Put us in your ears. That sounded pretty naughty.
You get our after show with the RSS feed.
That's right. You get the after show. Right. Benefit. There's benefit to cruising on over to our website. So do it. Do it now. edandethan.com.
Ethan writes some decent articles too every once in a while.
Not for the last month and a half.
Ah, that's okay.
You know,
You're
agro service is busy.
It is crazy.
Busy. Yeah, anyway, I English good. I English really well. Me speak it really good. Make all time.
I have a stack of things, honey-do list to do. So it's...
Yeah, that's right.
It's
See, me living the single life right now, I don't have to worry about that anymore, like I ever did. All right, so anyway, we've also got a surprise for the listeners. There is another person in studio. He's lurking right now behind the mic. His name is Andrew Bassett. He joins us as our third chair today. So, Andrew, thanks a bunch.
Well, thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, yeah, no, lots of fun. I guess we're going to talk, I want to get to a Bitcoin thing right away, but before we do, there is actually a specific reason that you're here, and that's because I wanted to talk to you about kind of unschooling, because your background is not one in which, you know, that is, could be described as having been spent in the public school system, right?
Right.
So you never went to school, or what's the how you know, what was your schooling experience?
Right. Well, there's this concept known as unschooling. Basically, it means you don't go to any public school. You don't go to a private school. You pretty much teach yourself. That's not 100% the case. You know, my parents.
You have guidance and interaction with other people, right?
To some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we'll get into all of this later, but I for the listeners, are you in a cardboard box? Or are you generally just not successful? you know, obviously, because you didn't go to school, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough.
Yeah, but you wear really nice clothes for a homeless guy.
I know.
Yeah.
I know how to stretch a dollar.
It's a good skill to have, you know.
Yeah.
All right. Now, obviously, we're joking around. Actually, what is it you do for a living? What's your occupation?
Yeah, well, I work at IBM.
Okay.
My job title is I'm an applications analyst.
Okay, so because I went to public school, I have no idea what that means.
Right.
What does an applications analyst do?
I basically look at old programs, figure out what they're doing, and figure out how to make them better.
Super cool.
So
All
you
right.
know code. So this is a good, do you know a little bit of Bitcoin code?
I do. I've followed quite a bit. I don't know any specific code, actually. I haven't looked at it, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I do follow the
You
Bitcoin.
could understand it if you saw it, is because me and Ethan are
Or
just
if
like,
you studied it,
Yeah.
you could get into it if you
I
wanted
could,
to.
definitely.
Yeah. Future
Cool.
core developer right here. No, okay. So
we're going to make our own cryptocurrency, the Ed and Ethan coin.
yeah, what's that going to trade at? Less than a penny?
That's
All
what
right.
Bitcoin was at one point. So you know.
That's exactly right. So, you know, success in waiting. All right. Actually, there is already a coin out there for the Freedom Fiends, isn't there? Is it
there?
Kitcoin? Kitcoin?
Oh, really?
I think so.
Well, there's the LBT coin, I know. We're
right,
waiting
right.
on some of that, I think.
I don't know. I haven't kept up with that. All right. So anyway, look. Right now, in the world of Bitcoin, there is I guess you call it a big issue, right?
Yeah.
So right now, there is a mining pool called ghash.io, and it's gained a very large portion of the network. In fact, I think it was actually over 50% before we were recording, I think yesterday.
You're talking 50% of the entire Bitcoin network?
Yeah, so basically how this works is, the way I like to describe it is if you start out at the very beginning of Bitcoin, right, and you're the only computer auditing the Bitcoin network, you're the only one on there, so you get a block reward at that time of 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, right? So that's how mining worked. Now, if you added a second computer, then you get, on average, statistically, 1 block reward every 20 minutes, because now you and another computer are competing for the same block reward.
It wouldn't be 20. So the first one would be 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, and the second one, wouldn't that be 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes? Or?
25 Bitcoin is the number of Bitcoin that was now, that every 4 years or so, the block reward for finding a block goes
down.
Yeah, it gets cut in half. So what I was referring to was computers competing for the 1 block reward every 10 minutes, right? So statistically, you start out, if you're the only computer on the network, you get that single block reward every 10 minutes. You add a second computer of equal power to the network, then you'd both be competing for that block reward. So statistically, every 20 minutes, now you'd get the 50 Bitcoin block reward.
Yeah. Well, the Bitcoins dissipate over time at a constant rate, pretty much, no matter how much computing power is going on, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. So no matter how much computing power you add to the network, the rate of issuance is the same over time. There's some technological sort of foibles there as to how that does change a little bit. There's variance in that, but that is not core to that is not important to the core concept. That is how mining works.
More people that join the network increase the difficulty to mine. To that aspect. Yes.
But I like to keep it to competition. It's just different market players are competing for a block reward every 10 minutes. So, okay. The problem that you run into is if one market participant starts auditing the Bitcoin network, mining it, because miners are auditing every transaction, that goes on. What happens is if one network participant gains control of 50% or more of the Bitcoin network, they have a statistical advantage over all other miners, which means that if they want to, let's say I am a malicious miner, I have 51% of the network hash rate, I want to send you, Andrew, $1 worth of Bitcoin, and then at the same time, I'm going to send that very same dollar worth of Bitcoin to Ed. Mm-hmm. So that's a counterfeit transaction.
You're not supposed to do that.
That's
You're not supposed to be able to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the mining network is supposed to prevent that, in that when miners see it, they say one of these transactions is invalid, so it doesn't get a confirmation. It doesn't get audited to say it's okay.
I'm just I don't understand how they would actually do it. Would they press it on 2 different computer screens at the same time? And then, I'm confused of how how it actually would happen. How would you set the process in motion?
It's okay, in the background, in the darkness of the code. Mm-hmm. There are different ways you could execute a double spend attack. They're very technical. Okay. I'm not going to go into that because I don't even fully understand it myself. Okay. But
it's possible.
It's possible is what counts, right? So. Where you run into a major problem is basically the reason that becomes possible when you have 50% or more of the network as a miner is because you're now in a position where you have the majority voice to say these transactions are valid. So when you announce a new block, which is a new page in the ledger book that records all of Bitcoin's transactions, you announce it to the network. The network basically looks at whoever has issued, or whatever blockchain or bundle of pages in the ledger book, if you want to put it that way. Whichever blockchain is longer, the network recognizes that as the legitimate blockchain. So a miner could, in theory, validate invalid transactions, but only up to a certain point, because there is a point where one of those transactions will be audited as invalid because the Bitcoin network has to consolidate. It can't just say, sure, there are more coins being spent for some reason. Because if it could, then the whole system.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand how that works, where if any one party controls more than 50% of all the computing power on the network, basically.
Yeah.
But is that actually in reality possible? Because I know that there's a lot of computing power on the Bitcoin network.
Well, okay, so what makes this possible and a problem right now is that ghash.io, as an example, is a mining pool, right? So a bunch of different people who are mining on the network, individually, they really have no financial hope of ever dominating the network.
Well, like, why would they pool together?
Okay, so the reason that miners would pool together to all mine as one sort of organization and then split up the profits between themselves is to reduce variance. So when you're mining on the Bitcoin network, in theory, if you point your mining hardware at a pool and expect to get a full block reward, right now it's 25 Bitcoin. So if you expect to get 25 Bitcoin statistically within a month, right? Then you could also mine independently and find that one Bitcoin blockchain block statistically within about a month.
Okay.
The problem, though, is that the variance is so high. You could find that single block in a matter of a couple of minutes, or it might take you 20 years.
Right, so you might be spending all this power and you might get absolutely nothing to show for it.
That's
well,
right.
So it's kind of like buying a mutual fund instead of buying an individual stock.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way to put it. It's just to produce as much predictability as possible, right? So this produces a kind of a weird incentive in the Bitcoin mining world, is that if you're looking at a way to reduce variance, you have to look at the largest mining pools, because the largest mining pools have the least amount of variance. And if you're trying to squeeze as much profit as you can out of your Bitcoin mining hardware, decreased amounts of variance help you achieve that. So it's kind of a weird contradiction in incentives. You don't want a mining pool to be in control of 50% or more of the Bitcoin network, because if they are, they become a point of potential failure, right? So if a government, for instance, exerts influence on the mining pool, then that mining pool could damage the Bitcoin network somehow, perhaps censor transactions or double spend if they're malicious, right? And by the way, it's worth mentioning that the people who run ghash.io do have a history in which they have engaged in double spend transactions. It was against a gambling website. So this, to me, is a very clear indicator that they have a history of malicious acts.
So how big are they right now, though?
I think right now, since recording right now, I think they've come down to about 42% of the network. They were up actually over 50% earlier. So
yeah, I remember seeing it on Reddit.
Yeah.
So 42% of all the computing on the entire Bitcoin network is through one party.
One pool, and essentially it's one party.
One pool control that could be controlled by a single person potentially.
See, Satoshi envisioned it to be CPU power, one CPU, one vote type of thing.
Sort of.
Well, kind of.
Wow.
And so this one person is essentially controlling all the computing power that the people are voluntarily going into.
They're voluntarily lending their computing power to that person, right? So
So what's the solution to this 51% attack then?
Well, the solution is playing out as we speak. And it's kind of funny because when this does crop up, and it has cropped up more than once.
This is like the third time, I think, in the past year-ish.
Something like that.
Yeah.
When this situation does crop up, it's kind of funny because I see people talking about how I said this was a problem and people laughed at me. Well, look now, it's a problem. Well, also, look now, the solution is playing itself out. There is, I mentioned these weird competing incentives. So the one incentive for seeking out decreased variance kind of acts against a different incentive, which is if you're part of a mining pool that does dominate the network, you are part of an organization that is directly affecting the confidence of Bitcoin. In fact, you could argue certainly that right now Bitcoin price is having a lot of trouble towards the downside because people are concerned about the integrity of the network.
I know there was a big run-up, so after a big run-up, there's usually a down.
Well, in this case, it's always difficult to determine specifically what moves price, right? But in this case, certainly there are people who have a vested interest in keeping the integrity of the network alive. So on the one hand, you may want to go to the largest mining pool to reduce variance, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, you want to be part of organizations that are not necessarily dominant of the network because you understand that it reduces confidence in the network. So
there's kind of an incentive to be part of the largest pool in some way. You basically get the same upside with just with a lower level of not necessarily risk, but
if
less like you said, less variance.
yes.
Yeah.
But if the trading value of your Bitcoin tanks because you're part of a large organization that's causing confidence in the network to drop,
It's kind of so do you think that the what is it, ghash.io, their portion of the whole network has been going down because of that?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There has actually been it's kind of funny. There have been people posting online talking about how they are specifically moving their hashing power away from ghash.io to restore and instill confidence in the network. There's also there are market-based solutions here as well on Havelock Investments, crypto stocks investment site, which I wouldn't recommend, but it's interesting anyway. There's an equity there for Petamine, which is a company that basically what they do is they pay out dividends. They use half of the mining profits that they accrue from mining to buy new equipment, and the other half they use to pay out dividends, right? So investors they get profit, but they also get a share in an increasingly large
That's cool.
Bitcoin mining operation. But the reason they're interesting is because they have publicly stated that they are going to move away from ghash.io. So now what's really funny about this is investors have started in the Bitcoin world, have started investing in Petamine. So not only just to get their dividends, but also because they want to invest in a company that is trying specifically to keep confidence alive in the Bitcoin network. So that's pretty neat.
And the community has also one solution, P2 Pool. Mining pool, which is essentially it's decentralization of the mining pool. So instead of one person controlling it, it is a protocol that is controlling it, which is essentially, you would think that would only be the main one. Like maybe over time we'll see that one grow. Well, it's fairly small still.
There are problems for P2Pool, which I guess include variance because it's smaller, but with an increase in the number of people using it, that may play out to be the best choice. I'm not sure. We'll see. And there's another thing too. A 51% attack is if ghash.io was in fact malicious or more malicious. I really do think that they are a malicious market actor, but that's just because of their history, not necessarily what they're doing now. But even if that was the case, look, a double spend from somebody who controls a large portion of the network is made difficult, I think, by something called Rule 13 in the protocol for block messages on the Bitcoin network. And look, I don't fully understand this myself. I'm not going to try to explain it to any detail because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It seems no one actually really talks about Rule 13. So there's really no information out there on it. And that's something I think really should be rectified. If you are in the Bitcoin community or a developer, you need to check into Rule 13 so it can be more properly explained, because I think this has major implications for whether or not a 51% attack is conceivable even after a couple of hours.
Tweet us at Ed and Ethan or send us an email at feedback@edandethan.com if you know more about this. That'd be great.
Educate us. But basically, Rule 13 says that if there are 6 blocks mined on the blockchain, block number 7 cannot exceed the timestamp for block number 7 between it and block number 6 cannot exceed the median time of the past 6 blocks. So, digest that in your brain, chuck it out the other ear. I think it needs to be looked into because this is intriguing to me. It would seem to imply that keeping a double spend confirmed past 6 blocks may be practically impossible to do.
Yeah.
So this is why people recommend the 6 confirmation things. It's not just an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that even if someone somehow did get 51% and used it to their advantage, it would still not work out and mess up the network.
Yeah, that's what this would seem to imply to me. Like I said, there's really no information out there on Rule 13, but Rule 13 for block messages, I think, is would strongly imply that, yeah, this is just not conceivable. It's not possible to carry out with any notable level of success. So we've burned almost through the whole first half. I guess we've got a few minutes left, right, Ed?
We've got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, well, there you go. I guess, geez, we would take a longer time to talk about bonds, right? So why don't we just quickly mention MultiBit? I think that's probably the best idea here. MultiBit, I wanted to talk about MultiBit like 3 or 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was a little while ago, yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I don't know. Oh, wow, this is actually from June. Whoa. Okay. Well, so I don't even know if this story is relevant anymore, but it's interesting nonetheless. So MultiBit ran into a problem, right? So they have this really cool wallet application, lots of downloads, over 1.5 million. In fact, I guess at the time of the writing of this story at CoinDesk, they put the estimate more like 1.8 million. So that's not bad. Lots of people using the wallet, right? But basically, as a labor of love, this wallet as a free project started to be very taxing for the developers, right? In terms of time.
Yeah, lots of questions and stuff
lots
like
of
that.
support requests, all that stuff. So what they decided to do was they said, okay, well, any transaction that goes through the MultiBit wallet will attach a very, very, very small fee. Right, and the idea behind it was we have almost 2 million users, right? So if every one of them pays a little small fee,
this is still, we're talking about Bitcoin here. It's not some other currency. Okay.
Yeah. So the idea here was that because they had such a large user base, they could depend on collecting a very small fee from that user base to fund their project, right?
And when you say very, very tiny, how tiny is it?
Oh, gosh, I think it was
like
a couple pennies or something, not even.
What is it? Well, is it a percentage basis of a transaction?
No, every transaction would have a set amount attached to it, right? So the reason this interested me is because it's kind of like how governments think. You get this kind of a, we have a tax base, so if we charge everybody, $50 in taxes for the next year, we'll collect $50 from every taxpayer, right? Yeah, it makes sense, right? Except when taxpayers start to say, well, I'm going to conceal income or whatever, I'm going to find a way around the payment. MultiBit, they had 2 options, right? They could have imposed this tax because that's what it is. It's essentially a tax. It's an opt-out because you can just stop using MultiBit if you want.
So what is the value proposition? Like, why do people use MultiBit instead of spending their own Bitcoins normally?
Good question. I mean, look, MultiBit is just a wallet application, right? So it's a place to have public-private keys, which is what many other wallets do. So they had a couple of options right here. In the minute we've got left, basically what happens is they could have imposed this tax, or they could have said, we'll add a value-added feature that people might want to pay for. So they opted instead for the fee that they would collect from their users. I honestly think that's kind of why they'll die. Is because they didn't go for the value added. They didn't go, we're going to work on providing something our customers would want to buy. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to impose a fee on what their customers are already getting for free from them and their competitors. And I think that's a mistake.
I will agree.
Yeah. So, okay. We're going to continue on into the second half, and I'm going to kind of give Andrew some breathing room so he can actually talk. We're going to, give him some actual freedom to chat rather than have me just rant about Bitcoin for the whole, hour or whatever. Come back after the break. We're going to go for these valuable messages, depending on which stream you're on. Maybe more valuable for other streams. And we'll be back right away. This is Ed and Ethan. know you're tired of all the useless background chatter from the mainstream media. It's no wonder they struggle as much as they do, despite all the resources they're given, but that's why we're here. Be sure to visit us at edandethan.com to check out our newest updates, and while you're there, hit the donate button to help us further develop our product for your benefit. If you're a Bitcoin fan, look for our Bitcoin wallet address on the edandethan.com homepage and throw us some Satoshis. Of course, you could always just stick with the status quo.
Government's just great because it's got all the answers.
Zombie what brains?
Now from Global Edmonton, the News Hour with Gordon.
Brains.
This is CNN.
Brains.
This is CTV News.
Brains.
CBC News.
Brains. The Ed and Ethan Podcast. Come to where the brains are. All right. Once again, unto the breach.
Brains.
Are we putting brains in
Yeah,
again?
I don't know.
Haven't we
Sure.
had brains in for the last,
Hey,
3 shows?
No, we put it in last one, and then we hadn't had it for like a long time.
Okay, for
So
the
now we're gonna get a lot.
uninitiated, Andrew, this is our promo spots that we plug in for our own stream or RSS feed. I don't know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't call it a stream.
Well, it goes out on a couple of voluntary virtues and freedom phalanx. They get that too.
Yeah, we put in our own homemade promos for the show. One of them is a zombie seeking out brains, and he finally finds them at Ed and Ethan. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we took up the whole first segment with Bitcoin, which is always a fun pleasure to do. I'm sure there are some listeners out there on various affiliates who went, I don't know what that's all about. So why don't we talk about something more, I guess, personable, right? More relatable for individuals. And that is, Andrew, the reason that you're here today. I wanted to talk to you about the whole unschooling experience. Ed's very curious about
Yes, I am.
parenting stuff and the background that you've gone through there. So let's rehash, though, first. So you are a program analyst?
Applications analyst.
Okay, you're an applications analyst at IBM, so not living in a cardboard box. You seem to have done well, okay for yourself, but you haven't gone through the public school system. So
Now, do you have secondary education to get that job? Is that
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
okay,
and you're able to actually write and read and everything? So that's good.
what degree? Give
Like it seems so weird. Like we say this and it's ridiculous, but people seriously, that's a huge objection. You don't send your kid to public school; they're not going to know how to read and do math. That is a huge, legitimate objection people put forth.
Well, I mean, it's like saying if we don't pay for the roads, they won't get built. Or if we don't, I mean,
Yeah.
No, it's true.
Same logic.
You get a certain frame of mind that this is how things work, and if it weren't for that, then nothing would exist. But that's not the way it is.
It's not typically how reality works out, right? Everybody assumes that if things are not done by the state, by a central planner, typically, if things are not done by a central planner, then everybody stands idly by as idle market actors going, what do we do next? I don't understand. How do I move my arms? So, okay. But let's get to how, I guess, is there a way to describe how you were not introduced to school? Like, can you conceptualize for me why you didn't go to public school?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a decision made by my parents. I basically learned to read at a very early age.
Okay.
And most of my childhood was focused on video games. Yeah.
Basically, you were seeking out leisure. Is that kind of, would that be fair to say, or?
Yeah, like basically, think of what a kid does when he comes home from school, and then that's my life every day for 18 years.
Now,
awesome.
did your mom sit you down at the table and said, "You're gonna have to learn the alphabet. You're gonna have to, you know how to read. We're gonna show you how to read. We're gonna show you math." Like, was there any of that structure at all?
Well, yeah, except it wasn't sitting down at a table. It was sitting on the couch and reading stories from interesting. And you follow through the words. You learn the alphabet. It's and that's the thing about learning. It does not need to be structured, sitting at a table, hunched over.
Okay.
And and that's really, I think, the main thing is, there's so much to be learned from things that we wouldn't normally consider to be educational, but really are.
Right. So basically, it seems like in your situation, your interests were what was catered to.
Right, and I think the idea there is interests tend to drive education, as opposed to the other way around, which is how the school system might try and do it.
Well, it's interesting how you say that what you did after school, you had fun or whatever. And for me, my after school was like 2 hours of homework every night. And I'm not, I'm not the smartest guy. And obviously that wasn't working, and it doesn't work because there's multiple studies that show that homework is nonsense in that sense. But I'm just curious as like, so were your parents, were they homeschooled themselves, or what was the progenesis? Why did they want to do this?
No, well, I guess for different reasons. Well, I think my mom was probably the main decision maker behind the way I was educated. But no, she did not care for the public school system. She went to public school. Both my parents did.
Yeah.
She basically learned the hard way what's wrong with the system, and
She was a survivor of it.
Yeah.
She was one of the smart ones, and this was before the days of the internet too. Now, do you have do you have siblings at all? Did they go to school?
Yeah, I have an older brother and a younger brother. My younger brother was basically raised the same way I was. He didn't actually. He has never gone to any type of school, but
he's not living on the streets.
Oh
either?
no, he's got a good career for himself going. He takes care of kids. And he's also a firefighter.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay. Automatically handsome in my book then. So, you're very similar to yourself, I should add. So your siblings, okay, let me get this straight to make sure I've understood this. So you don't go to public school. You didn't go to public school. Your younger brother didn't?
Same. My older brother.
Your older
basically decided he wanted to go to high school, and he did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't go to the grades, like the pre-high school grades, right?
No.
So how did he? Because this is actually very similar to myself.
Yeah.
I didn't go to school. Well, I did go to school off and on in grades, I think 1 and 3, and I can't remember. But anyway, I the majority of my schooling was in high school. I found it very difficult to transition into high school. I even assumed it was my recommendation to the educators that they hold me back a grade at least, right? So what was your brother's experience? How would you relate that transitioning into the public schooling system? How was that for him?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to say. I don't know. I was pretty young. He's quite a bit older than me, I should mention.
Okay.
So when he went to high school, I was probably a toddler at that point.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Has he related much about this experience to you?
Well, what I know is that he felt kind of secluded and so that had a lot to do with why he wanted to go to school. He did want more of the social aspect, and
right.
And that's a thing that people mention a lot is
yes.
If you don't go to school, you lack on the social experience, and I agree with that.
Right.
But what I would add is that you miss out on certain social experiences, both good and bad.
Sure. Well, I also think it's not necessarily fair to make that argument because really think about it. You're saying, look, we've corralled up all the kids in society and we put them in a building. So if you don't go to the building, you don't get to associate with them. Well, hold on. Yeah. What if they were out in the world to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's. I think that's actually a really unfair sort of thing to say is that you go to socialize, and that's the same reason, by the way, I went to public schools because I wanted to socialize.
Yes, and there is some stigma behind the unschooling or the homeschooling, because the unschooling is kind of like a new term, but homeschooling terminology where even not so much myself, but Amber, she's a little worried about we need to have him in programs or my son, when he gets to that age where he's going to be going to school, he needs to be participating in social activities, and that is true. And there's tons of different things that he can do. I know you mentioned off air that you did judo or taekwondo or something like that.
Yeah, taekwondo.
So
I knew it looked scary.
So there are avenues to pursue like after curricular activities, so you can socialize with people. And I know in Saskatoon there's like a home, the unschooling home secular network on social media where you can interact with other people who are doing the same thing. And I know there's a store downtown that Amber goes to quite regularly. They have just get-togethers.
Right.
With other like-minded individuals who share the same philosophy.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you don't, you are kind of, you're kind of closed off in that sense.
Well, I
let's-
think
let's- yeah.
I think living in the city can really help with that a lot.
Yes.
And like what you mentioned about those unschool, or well, is it unschooling groups?
It's
Or
secular
secular
homeschool or
homeschooling
something,
groups. Yeah, I mean that's that's not something that I had the benefit of, but I mean, I had neighbors and I had a few friends, not a whole lot.
Well, were you in the city or were you also?
No, this is rural. So
okay.
basically my parents grew up, built a house way out of town, and well, it's very different, and that's what I can say.
Sure, but what is your personal experience with having in respect to socialization? Because you're in a rural area, you said it's kind of difficult. So I guess
See, and this is something interesting because I went to school and I feel socially awkward because I went to school. So there's kind of like it's like, to me, that's like, it's the opposite in that sense. But I can see, I remember going through church. We had to go to like a big meetup with like all the different dioceses or something. Yeah. And there was one kid that was there and he was homeschooled and he was, everyone was like, man, that kid is weird. And he was kind of, we were the only ones that were being nice to him. So then he kind of followed us around and everyone was uncomfortable because he said like, he's like, Mama knows best all the time and stuff like this.
Okay.
And he was, him and his mom lived together and he just, yeah. But it was interesting because everyone recognized that this kid is weird because he doesn't know how to socialize because he's only been with his mom in that sense. And I don't want to have that happen to my kids. But
right.
I don't think that it is going to, and I'm not worried. I am somewhat worried, but I'm not. I can't transition that into a question.
This is therapy session for Ed apparently today. We're almost interviewing Ed, but but no, I like it seems like you maybe did have some difficulty in respect to socializing like the normals.
Yeah,
right?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, my early years growing up, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, were pretty good because I had kids my age who lived right down the road, and we would hang out. But teen years, that was pretty tough.
Right.
My friends basically moved away, and it was. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was, socially speaking, it was pretty rough between the ages of 12 and 20.
So was there pressure for you to socialize specifically with people your own age? Because I remember in my experience, I had a very wide breadth of sorts of people from different age groups to socialize with.
Well, actually, no, because most of my socializing was actually with adults growing up. Parents would have friends over, and I'd hang out, and I grew to become very comfortable with people much older than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that experience. Same thing for me, right? Is a lot of people in my life who I socialized with on a fairly regular basis, on I would call equal footing, were significantly older than me in some cases. So I mean, I was in a rural area too. I mean, the largest town I grew up in was like 2,000 people, I think. So not exactly a hustling, bustling metropolis. When you get to the point where you are seeking out secondary education, so to move on to your, I don't know, supercomputer analyst thing, whatever it is you do, so how does that journey work? Because you can't show up with the government approved piece of paper to say that you're allowed to be educated. So how does that work?
Well, the way it actually worked in my case is, I went to SciS. That was where my education was, and that's where they offer a 2-year a diploma program, and
right.
It's kind of like computer science. So, but basically what happened was my mom signed me up for that, and I had to take basically an entry exam.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it basically said, you need to have certain competency in reading, writing, arithmetic, and
you just barely passed, right? you came in with your club and piece of coal to scribble on the paper with, right?
And normally They require a certain high school education and diploma,
Like a
and
GED or something.
yeah.
Hey?
yeah, or high school or GED. But when they saw my scores, they threw that out the window. They said, "You're in." Yeah.
Well,
Right on.
like, amazing. I just
Yeah.
you're challenging convention.
Yeah.
So when can you give me an idea? Were your scores exceptionally high? Were they just, or were
Yeah.
they were?
Yeah.
Right on.
So
Now, when you're now, I guess this is a while back to think, but did your parents have to submit some type of paperwork to the state to show that you're being educated when you were being homeschooled? Or are you not? certain
I'm
on
not
that?
sure about that. I don't.
I know
I'm
that's the case today,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
You know what? I seem to remember that they would come every couple of years and ask for some sort of proof, and I think it was kind of like getting out of jury duty. You kind of you can make up some little lie and to make them go away.
So it was
Right,
it was like a social worker would come to the house and like interview you and your parents
I
or
don't
something.
remember
Or?
anything like that. I think they maybe send a letter and they require you to send a letter back and
Oh,
prove it. I don't know.
right. But it seemed, because one of the major concerns, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, like
Yeah.
some jurisdictions are very unschooling friendly, some jurisdictions are not. By the way, I've lost my timer, Ed, just so you know.
Okay.
That's good fun. Anyway, I mean, some jurisdictions are very friendly to the idea, the concept of unschooling, and some jurisdictions are basically, you have to meet certain educational standards. Test scores have to be just so. You have to show us that by such and such an age, your child can read a certain sort of.
I think that's a perfect example of the kind of homogenization that happens in all forms of government, not just education.
That's not a
Education.
bad point, isn't it? It's this is my biggest concern with public education. Is indeed it creates that kind of a monotone
One size
system.
fits all.
Yeah.
And imagine if government was running our clothing stores and they wanted a one size fits all uniform for us. That's pretty much what we have for our public school.
Wasn't it kind of odd to say, we're all our own special snowflake? Like we're all very, we're dynamic creatures that have ingenuity and imaginations. And by the way, let's go to the black and white system. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I mean, then the argument is, well, people need to be exposed to various types of education, so at least they have an idea of what they're interested in and what they're not.
Right.
But that's not really how the public school system does it. They basically put you through 12 years of a homogenized education, and you can't you spend a year deciding and then take. It's not like you go to university, you get to basically pick what kind of education you want. But we've come to as a society, we don't think that that's appropriate for people at a younger age. I'm not sure why.
Look, we're sold on this idea that younger people don't have enough agency, they don't have enough capability to make those decisions, even to consult, right? So I think a large part of that is kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, like the the babyization of people. I don't know what to call that. It's
We are smarter than you, so we need to take control of your life because you don't know.
And I think that's another flawed assumption, is that adults are smarter than kids.
I think it's like all the opposite, because kids aren't culturalized, right? So they can see through.
Well, that's true.
The BS, right? Yeah. So there was a question. The age restrictions. So you had friends that were close to your own age, but you also talked with adults. Were the adults like surprised, like this kid is actually not talking like I remember Dana Martin talking about how she can tell if this kid is unschooled and schooled because the schooled kids never look her in the eye, never looked adults in the eye because they're like this authority figure, and homeschooled kids they're like evil playing field level.
So yeah, your interaction with older folks. Was there a different dynamic?
Well, I'm not sure that I never heard that one actually, Ed, but different how so?
Well, like when I was younger, I was very well spoken. I had a really well developed vocabulary, right? And this is something that really threw a lot of older folks off because they weren't used to one of the small people speaking at such a level, right? So did you experience anything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, was
Another
this,
win for homeschools or homeschoolers.
I guess. So obviously, okay. Clearly,
no, people did not believe that I was. Yeah, that was one of the main things people would say. Well, you talk like an adult,
right.
right?
And when I was I guess no longer of schooling age, a lot of people, I would tell them I was a high school dropout, and it would really take them up. What, really? You don't talk like a high school dropout? You don't express yourself that way? I'm really surprised.
It's funny because you do.
Yeah.
Like they think that you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, just think of the high school dropouts or college dropouts that you know of. Can you think?
Well, Bill Gates is a university dropout.
Well, yeah, look at all
Mark
the big
Zuckerberg.
boys,
He
yeah.
dropped out of.
That's right.
I
Harvard?
think Steve
remember.
Jobs
No.
went to university, and I think he dropped out too.
Yeah.
People that are, usually become entrepreneurs because they recognize value in the market, and they've been shown value to them compassionately and voluntarily, so it just kind of translates into that.
So I guess, Andrew, have you met any other unschooled people similar to yourself? Are you like the only one you know of, sort of, or what's
My family? I'm not aware of any other truly unschooled
right?
people. I did grow up with some homeschooled kids.
How were the homeschool? What in your conception? What is the difference between unschooling and homeschooling?
Homeschooling is basically a structured education that takes place at home.
Right. And
Unschooling is a completely 100% unstructured education. It's basically your entire childhood is playtime.
Right.
So now, if you asked your mom, like, does she know the concept of unschooling, or she just said, I don't, you're
I'm
free?
not sure. She always referred to it as homeschooling.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I guess same for me, right? I was homeschooled, but really it was just constant rebellion. But so if you so obviously there's a difference between unschooling and homeschooling. You were clearly unschooled. You've learned to read and write surprisingly. You have a successful career. Is there, do you think, honest merit to the worry that maybe for some people a structured schooling environment, especially for people maybe on the autism spectrum, that kind of thing, these people are better served by a centrally planned, structured schooling environment?
Well, you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that a centrally planned environment is ideal for anyone. But no, I think that there are, just because it worked out pretty well in my case doesn't mean it would for anyone. Mm-hmm. I think some people definitely do a lot better in more of a structured learning environment. But there's no reason to say that it has to be centrally controlled and homogenized.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, Andrew, when you find the right lady and settle down, are you going to unschool your kids too, or what do you think?
I won't be having kids, but
no, okay.
Wretched creature said, just horrible things.
But if I was, that's actually, if hypothetically I did have kids, that's actually kind of a tough question. A lot of it has to do with where you live, who you know.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a real hard sell to get me to want to have kids put it through a public system, but
right. See, for me, it's should I go and repeat that? I guess from stepdad to biodad. If I do that, for me it's easy. Yeah. I don't want to.
But another thing you got to understand
is
right now our public education system is sort of turned into socialized daycare. So if you decided you don't want to have kids in school, well, you're going to have to pay for some
Everybody
other sort
else's.
of care. So there's a huge financial disincentive to homeschooling your kids.
Wow,
So-
that's a good point.
So the Andrew of today, would you go back and what would you say to your mom to change things to something different that would happen?
I suppose there are more things I could have done to try to find people to socialize with, and maybe in my teenage years. I mean, that was pretty tough.
Right. That seems to be one of the toughest in any environment, and not just the unschooling, homeschooling. Ed, you mentioned there your own sort of social awkwardness, right? It seems like that to me speaks to a broader sort of cultural dysfunction that's very common. This sort of there are a lot of ideas that we kind of take for granted that, okay, first, the authority figure at school, that's so ingrained into how people think commonly that I think it creates problems for people socially, how we socialize. I've gone on Facebook, I've written novels about how people are kind of poisoned in how they think about communicating with one another.
Yeah, and it's tough too. Like, just thinking back now, like the family structure is authoritarian, or at least my family was. Hockey, I played hockey, authoritarian structure there. School, completely authoritarian. Church, completely authoritarian. I grew up in a completely authoritarian world. And then now you're let go, be free, and then I'm just like, I don't know how to be free. I like being told what to do. 'Cause I'm comfortable in that.
Yeah, it seems like that. I don't know, Andrew. Just as the music comes up and we're on our way into the after show. By the way, we should we're gonna go into the after show. We've got other stories to talk about, and Andrew will join us for that as well. But I guess I don't know. Just any final quick thoughts about? Are you thankful at the very least for being unschooled as compared to being schooled, homeschool, or public school?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we'll be back after the music breaks and all that good stuff. In the meantime, be sure to stay tuned right here on LibertyExpressRadio.com for more great content. You know what's coming. More greatness. All right. Also, tune into or check out the website, edandethan.com. Find all of our stuff there. Twitter, feedback at edandethan.com if you want to send us anything via the emaily tubes or whatever. Twitter at edandethan.com if you want to scream and shout at us in public. Thanks again for listening. This is Ed and Ethan.